The doorbell rang at exactly 8:17 p.m. I remember because I'd just finished tucking my 5-year-old daughter Emma into bed, her tiny fingers still clutching the stuffed elephant my ex-wife had forgotten when she walked out on us 3 months ago. Standing on my porch was Katherine Chen, my ex-wife's intimidating boss, holding a casserole dish and wearing an expression I couldn't quite read. "You look terrible, David," she said matter-of-factly. "And I'm here to fix that." Little did I know those words would change everything. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected love and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe for more heartfelt content that reminds us all that sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as our greatest challenges. 3 months earlier, I'd come home from my shift at the hospital, I'm a pediatric nurse, to find Jessica packing her suitcases. 11 years of marriage, and she couldn't even look me in the eye when she said, "I can't do this anymore, David. I'm not meant to be a mother or a wife. I need to find myself." Emma had been at my mother's house that day, thank God. I didn't have to explain why Mommy was stuffing clothes into bags while Daddy stood frozen in the doorway, feeling like someone had hollowed out his chest with a rusty spoon. "What about Emma?" I'd asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jessica had paused then, her perfectly manicured fingers hovering over a folded sweater. "She has you. You've always been the better parent anyway." And just like that, my wife of over a decade walked out of our lives, leaving behind a confused 5-year-old who asked for her mother every night and a husband who suddenly had to figure out how to be both mom and dad while working full-time. The first few weeks were a blur of tears, both Emma's and mine, though I saved mine for after she fell asleep, take-out dinners, and late-night calls to my mother begging for advice on everything from detangling hair to dealing with Emma's nightmares. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" Emma would ask, her big brown eyes, so much like Jessica's, wide with innocent confusion. "Mommy needs some time to herself, sweetheart," I'd say, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. How do you explain abandonment to a child who still believes in fairy tales? By month 2, we'd established something resembling a routine. I'd switched to day shifts at the children's hospital, dropping Emma off at kindergarten on my way to work and picking her up after. My mother helped when she could, but at 72 with arthritis flaring in her knees, she couldn't be our everyday solution. The house was a disaster. Laundry piled up faster than I could wash it. Dishes filled the sink. Dust gathered on the shelves. But Emma was fed, bathed, and loved fiercely. I counted that as a win. It was during this chaotic period that I first encountered Katherine Chen outside of the obligatory company Christmas parties where Jessica had always kept me at a distance from her colleagues. Katherine was the chief of surgical services at the private hospital where Jessica worked as a surgical nurse. According to Jessica, Katherine was brilliant, demanding, and intimidating, a 40-year-old unmarried workaholic who expected nothing less than perfection. So when Katherine called me out of the blue one afternoon while I was juggling a grocery list and trying to convince Emma that we couldn't adopt the neighbor's cat, I was understandably confused. "David? This is Katherine Chen, Jessica's supervisor." "Dr. Chen," I'd stammered, immediately straightening as if she could see me through the phone. "Is everything okay? Is Jessica?" "Jessica is fine," she'd cut in, her voice crisp and efficient. "She's requested a transfer to our Seattle branch. I'm calling because she left some personal items in her locker, including what appears to be your daughter's artwork and some family photos. I thought you might want them." The mention of Seattle hit me like a physical blow. Jessica hadn't even told me she was leaving the state. Yes. "Thank you," I'd managed. "I can have them couriered to your home," Katherine had offered. "No, I can pick them up. Thank you for letting me know." I never made it to the hospital to collect those items. Emma came down with a fever that night, and by the time she recovered, I'd forgotten all about Katherine Chen's call in the chaos of single parenthood. Until she showed up on my doorstep with that casserole dish. "You're letting in cold air," Katherine said, still standing on my porch, the steam from whatever she'd cooked creating a halo around her in the chilly evening air. I stepped aside automatically. Sorry, I just wasn't expecting company. Katherine strode into my home with the confidence of someone who commanded operating rooms. She took one look at the living room, toys scattered across the floor, a half-folded basket of laundry on the couch, dishes from our dinner still on the coffee table, and raised an eyebrow. I was going to clean up after Emma went to bed, I said defensively. Katherine's expression softened slightly. I'm not here to judge your housekeeping, David. I brought dinner. Well, several dinners, actually. She lifted the casserole dish. This is just today's. There are more in my car, all labeled with reheating instructions. I meal prep on Sundays, it was no trouble to make extra. I stared at her, bewildered. Why would you do that? Katherine set the dish on the kitchen counter and turned to face me. In the harsh fluorescent light of my kitchen, I noticed for the first time how tired she looked beneath her composed exterior. There were faint shadows under her eyes, and a tension in her shoulders that spoke of long hours and heavy responsibilities. Because I know what it's like, she said simply. To have your life upended without warning. To suddenly be responsible for everything when you're used to sharing the load. I don't understand. Katherine sighed, leaning against the counter. My sister died 5 years ago. Car accident. Her husband couldn't handle raising their son alone, so I became Liam's guardian. He was 7 then. 12 now. I'm sorry, I said, genuinely moved by this unexpected revelation. I had no idea. Why would you? Jessica and I weren't exactly friends. She was an excellent nurse, but... Katherine trailed off, clearly choosing her next words carefully. Let's just say I wasn't surprised when she requested the transfer. I felt a familiar ache in my chest at the mention of Jessica. Did she say anything? About us? Katherine met my gaze directly. She said you deserved better. It's the only time I've ever agreed with her completely. The bluntness of her statement startled a laugh out of me, the first genuine laugh I'd experienced in months. Well, thank you for the food, Dr. Chen. It's very kind of you. Katherine, she corrected. And it's not just food I'm offering, David. I must have looked alarmed because she quickly added, I mean help. Practical help. Liam and I live 10 minutes from here. He's old enough to babysit for short periods. I have a housekeeper who comes twice a week who I could send over. And I know the director of a wonderful after-school program at the community center. Why would you do all that for us? I asked, genuinely confused. You barely know me. Katherine was quiet for a moment, her dark eyes studying me with an intensity that made me self-conscious of my wrinkled scrubs and the 3-day stubble on my chin. Because someone did it for me when I was drowning, she finally said. And because your daughter deserves a village, even if her mother chose to leave it. I felt something crack inside me then, the hard shell of isolation and stubborn pride I'd built around myself since Jessica left. Before I could respond, a small voice called from the hallway. Daddy? Who are you talking to? Emma stood in the doorway to the kitchen, rubbing her eyes sleepily, her stuffed elephant dragging on the floor beside her. Hey, sweetheart, I said, crossing to lift her into my arms. This is Dr. Chen. She brought us some food. Emma regarded Katherine solemnly. Are you Daddy's friend? Katherine stepped forward, her entire demeanor transforming as she addressed my daughter. Gone was the intimidating surgeon, replaced by a woman with a gentle smile and warm eyes. I'd like to be, she said. I have a boy named Liam who's a bit older than you. He has a treehouse in our backyard. Would you like to see it sometime? Emma's eyes widened. A real treehouse? With a ladder and everything? With a ladder and everything, Katherine confirmed. And a telescope for looking at stars. Can we go, Daddy? Please. Emma turned to me, more animated than I'd seen her in weeks. I looked from my daughter's hopeful face to Katherine's patient one. Maybe this weekend, if Dr. Chen, if Katherine isn't busy. Sunday afternoon, Katherine suggested. Liam and I usually grill for lunch. Nothing fancy. And just like that, we had plans, the first social engagement I'd agreed to since becoming a single parent. After Katherine left and I'd tucked Emma back into bed, with promises of treehouse adventures dancing in her head, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the casserole dish. The aroma of homemade lasagna filled the kitchen, not the frozen kind I'd been relying on, but the real deal with layers of pasta, meat, cheese, and what smelled like fresh herbs. Attached to the dish was a note with reheating instructions, as promised, but also a phone number and 3 simple words, "You're not alone." I ate my first home-cooked meal in months at my cluttered kitchen table, tears streaming down my face, feeling for the first time since Jessica left that maybe, just maybe, Emma and I were going to be okay. Sunday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety churning in my stomach. Emma, on the other hand, was nothing but excited, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on her favorite yellow dress and insisting I braid her hair like the princess in the movie. My fingers fumbled with the strands of her fine brown hair. YouTube tutorials had become my midnight companions, but I still struggled with anything more complicated than a simple ponytail. "Daddy, you're doing it wrong," Emma sighed with the infinite patience of a child used to her father's limitations. "I'm trying, sweetheart," I said, unraveling the mess I'd made and starting over. By the time we arrived at Katherine's address, a surprisingly modest 2-story home with a well-tended garden, Emma's hair was in something approximating a braid, and I'd changed my shirt twice, settling on a clean blue button-down that my mother had always said brought out my eyes. Katherine answered the door in jeans and a casual sweater, looking younger and more relaxed than she had in my kitchen. Behind her stood a lanky boy with a mop of dark hair and his mother's observant eyes. "David, Emma, welcome," Katherine said warmly. "This is my nephew, Liam." "Hi," Liam said, his eyes immediately going to Emma. "Do you like video games?" Emma, suddenly shy, pressed against my leg and shook her head. "That's okay," Liam said easily. "I've got other stuff too. Want to see the treehouse?" Emma looked up at me questioningly. I nodded encouragingly, and she cautiously stepped toward Liam. "It's through the backyard," Liam explained, already leading the way. "My uncle built it before he died. Aunt Kat made sure it was safe with extra railings and stuff." As the children disappeared toward the back of the house, Katherine gestured for me to follow her to the kitchen. "They'll be fine," she assured me. "The treehouse is visible from the kitchen window, and Liam is very responsible with younger kids." Katherine's kitchen was warm and inviting, with copper pots hanging from a rack and herbs growing in small pots on the windowsill. It was also impeccably organized, a stark contrast to the chaos of my own. "Can I help with anything?" I offered, feeling awkward just standing there. Katherine handed me a cutting board and a cucumber. "Salad duty. I hope you don't mind eating outside. The weather's too nice to waste." We worked side by side preparing lunch, falling into an easy rhythm that surprised me. Katherine was different here than I'd imagined her to be from Jessica's descriptions. Less intimidating, more human. She told me about her work at the hospital, about the challenges of suddenly becoming a parent to Liam, about her sister who had loved gardening and whose perennials still bloomed in the front yard. In turn, I found myself opening up about my struggles with single parenthood, about Emma's nightmares, about the guilt I felt for not being able to give her a normal family. "Normal is overrated," Katherine said, flipping burgers on the grill in her backyard while we watched Emma and Liam playing some elaborate game involving the treehouse and what appeared to be a rescue mission for stuffed animals. "What matters is that she feels safe and loved." "I'm trying," I said, the admission feeling like both a confession and a plea. "But sometimes I worry it's not enough." Katherine turned to look at me, her expression serious. "It's enough, David. You're enough. And it's okay to accept help when it's offered." After lunch, While the kids were engrossed in building a fort under Katherine's dining room table, she brought out a folder and placed it on the patio table between us. "What's this?" I asked. "Resources," she said simply. "The after-school program I mentioned. A list of babysitters Liam and I have used, all vetted and reliable. Information about a single-parent support group at the community center. And my housekeeper's contact information. She has an opening on Wednesday afternoons." I stared at the folder, a lump forming in my throat. "Katherine, I can't afford." She held up a hand to stop me. "The after-school program has scholarships. The support group is free. And Maria, my housekeeper, owes me a favor. Just, take the folder, David. Use what helps. Ignore what doesn't." I took the folder, our fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. "Thank you," I said, the words inadequate for the lifeline she was offering. Katherine smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face and made me suddenly aware of how beautiful she was. That's what friends are for. The weeks that followed established a new pattern in our lives. Emma started attending the after-school program 3 days a week, flourishing under the structure and social interaction. Katherine's housekeeper, Maria, began coming on Wednesday afternoons, restoring order to our home in 3 efficient hours. And most surprisingly, Katherine and Liam became regular fixtures in our lives. It started with Sunday lunches, which became a tradition. Then it expanded to occasional weeknight dinners when our schedules aligned. Katherine would bring food or we would cook together while the kids played. Liam, despite the age difference, was endlessly patient with Emma, teaching her card games and helping her build elaborate Lego structures. Katherine helped me navigate the practical aspects of single parenthood, everything from establishing a chore chart for Emma to figuring out how to handle parent-teacher conferences alone. I found myself texting her for advice about Emma's minor illnesses, benefiting from both her medical expertise and her parenting experience, and celebrating small victories with her, like the first time I successfully French braided Emma's hair without a YouTube tutorial. In return, I found ways to support Katherine too. I listened when she had difficult days at the hospital. I helped Liam with his science project when Katherine was stuck in an emergency surgery. I fixed the leaky faucet in her guest bathroom and replaced the burned-out light in her porch fixture. We were becoming something like a family, though neither of us acknowledged it directly. Then came Emma's 6th birthday, 4 months after Katherine had first appeared on my doorstep. I'd planned a small party at a local pizza place, inviting her classmates and a few kids from the after-school program. Katherine and Liam were on the guest list, of course. The party was in full swing, children running between arcade games, pizza being devoured, Emma beaming in a paper crown, when my phone rang. It was Jessica. I stepped outside to take the call, my heart pounding uncomfortably in my chest. "David?" Her voice was exactly as I remembered, and yet it felt like hearing a stranger. "Happy birthday to Emma." I meant to call earlier. "She's been waiting to hear from you," I said, trying to keep the accusation out of my tone. Jessica had called only twice in the past 4 months, both conversations brief and awkward. "I sent a gift. It should arrive tomorrow. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but I'm in the middle of a certification program and—" "It's fine," I interrupted, suddenly tired of her excuses. "Emma will appreciate the gift." There was a pause, then Jessica asked, "How is she? How are you both doing?" The question sparked an